There is a lot of the Christmas music that I listen to every year, and sometimes you're captive. Here at the radio station, we have one of our sister stations that actually plays Christmas music continuously through the season. So when I'm sitting at my desk, somebody has it on nearby, and I can hear what's being played. Some of it is lovely. Some of it is just absolutely beautiful. On the other hand, anything by somebody who's doing a chipmunk voice is completely off my list. I wouldn't listen to it at home. The song "Santa Baby" I find annoying. That's about prostitution, right? And my daughter once heard it when she was little and says, "Why is she calling Santa a baby?" Well, little girl, that's a subject we'll have to discuss when you're grown up. And then we've got some of these others. I'm sorry that Spike Jones was a very talented guy, but this kid who didn't brush his teeth, I don't really want to hear that song. It's annoying. It was annoying when I heard it when I was a kid. And one of my grandmothers liked it, so I had to hear it a lot at her house. And I'll throw in a couple more if I can think of them as time goes on. Oh, and kid, I know that you'd like a new pair of shoes for your mom before she goes, but over at the funeral parlor, the undertaker has a cardboard set just in case you need them. So some of these things, to me, no, Silent Night, that's Christmas music. It's beautiful. Perhaps the best Christmas song ever made. So you got good music and you've got bad music. But when people start to try and politicize Christmas music, or music that is at least, some of it isn't really, about the spiritual part of the season, but you hear it because, well, it's the dead of winter, winter wonderland, etc. Baby It's Cold Outside has been one of those. We had it when I was a kid growing up. We had a Dean Martin Christmas album in the house. And of course, Martin's whole act with he was not a drinker, by the way, even though he always had the glass in his hand and a cigarette in another hand. That whole act was simply a put on. But the Baby It's Cold Outside song was on one of his albums that my parents had that would get played periodically in the house. This is from the movie, I believe, back in 1949. And this is a different set of people singing it, but take a listen for a moment. This is what I'm talking about if you're not familiar with it. And so if you've been away on Mars for the last 40, 50 years, 70 years, you may not have heard it yet, but this is what it sounds like.
I really can't
But
stay.
baby, it's cold outside.
I've got to go away.
But baby, it's cold outside.
This evening has
Been
been
hoping that you'd drop
so
in.
very nice.
I'll hold your hands. They're just like
My
ice.
mother will start to
Beautiful,
worry,
what's your
and
hurry?
Father will be pacing the floor.
Listen to the fireplace
So
roar.
really I'd better scurry.
Beautiful, please don't
Well,
hurry.
maybe just a half a drink
Put
more.
some records on while I
The neighbors might think.
Baby, it's bad out there.
Say, what's in this
No
drink?
cabs to be had out there.
I wish I knew
Your
how.
eyes are
Now,
like
see, when she says, "What's in this drink?" All right, she's referring to alcohol, right? That's because back in the 1949 when the song was made, people might mix a drink and have a drink. So she's asking, is it a little too strong or whatever else? And in other words, it's not necessarily a Pepsi Cola. Somehow, over the years, the women in comfortable shoes, likely the ones in academia, tried to conclude when they heard those lyrics that the song was about date rape. Now, I hear a song about a guy who really likes the woman and she's just worried about, staying out too late. And he's trying to tell her, yeah, but the weather's really bad because he'd like to sit in front of the fire with her a bit longer. That's what I hear. Well, all of the Gloria Steinem types out there, as Archie Bunker used to call her Gloria Steinway, all the Gloria Steinem types out there over the years have decided that this song must go, just like the woman thinks she might go. She doesn't say I must go. She's kind of wavering there. The funny thing about men and women, they like each other's company, generally. And maybe it's the women who are complaining most about this who don't like the company of men. I don't know. I'm not going to try to imply anything there. They have to have some motivation, though, and their motivation, they're trying to get this song even banned from some playlists around the country. The thing is, they've been so loud and noisy about it over the last several years. Think I first heard about this. A friend of mine used to host a radio show in Sacramento, and he's a longtime veteran of the Home Shopping Network. And he posted something about it last year on Facebook, calling it the date rape song. And I'd never really heard that, but I started looking into it, and so many liberals have repeated it so long that even a lot of conservatives now buy into that notion that the song is about date rape. How do you got to work sometimes really, really hard to try and read some of these things in to an innocuous song about wintertime and a couple, spending a little time together. I don't know how liberals, where do they think we all came from? Anyway, I've got this from The Resurgent. A writer by the name of Inez Felcher. She says, Baby, It's Cold Outside has gotten a feminist makeover. Apparently, Lydia Lisa and Josiah Lemansky found themselves tortured by the unrevealed fate of what they imagine is the date rape victim described in the tune. And Lydia, speaking to CNN, said, You never figure out if she gets to go home. Apparently, she's a captive. So they made up new consent form approved lyrics. I kid you not. In fact, they have changed the drink in the song to pomegranate liqueur sparkling water, which of course is a popular drink among liberals across the land. It has no alcohol in it. Every year, campus feminists, the writer says, and their hysterical media counterparts reiterate their concerns about the song's problematic nature. One feminist columnist could barely stand to listen to the lyrics, saying, Even typing those 4 slimy words forced me to take 7 showers. Maybe she's just got body odor problems. I don't know. Though the critiques range, the writer says, from laughable to unhinged, all of them focus around the idea that the man in the song is convincing his unwilling partner to stick around and perhaps drugging her. Again, say what's in this drink. These staggering misinterpretations of the courtship dance between a man and a woman can only sound reasonable in a culture that insists that there are no differences between female and male sexuality. Sex differences in general are a societal construct, and traditional masculine and feminine behaviors are problems to overcome through indoctrination. There was some whack job, did I share this last week? Some whack job college professor who was working at some college in Canada, and a couple of weeks ago said that he's teaching all of his students that there indeed are no differences between men and women. Now, I don't know about you, but I've managed to notice that difference since I was a little boy. And I can still see it walking through the mall or the grocery store or just, any street here in Twin Falls. And, my brain immediately can identify, well, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes in this day and age, it's gotten a little bit more difficult to figure out what is what. And some of the people walking down the street aren't really sure themselves. But is there any point where we're going to allow sanity to ever reign again? I go back to what I said a few minutes ago. How do they think we all got here? We weren't created in test tubes. I think that the whole notion of a test tube baby still requires even it still requires a little of the same building block, wouldn't it? Am I losing something here? Am I missing something that the liberals have figured out that the rest of us just aren't smart enough? I just every day I sit here and I think about how these people are trying to change this culture. And then you have to ask yourself, what is the real goal? What is the real intent? To break down all of our familial bonds so that the government can better control you? And all of these things and all of these claims that this is sexist, that's racist, and it's not wrong to judge some guy. Yesterday, I wanted to buy some Christmas cards. I go to Winco because I like to buy the produce at Winco. I mean, I'm really, really happy with it. Good price, good produce. And then I wanted to buy a box of Christmas cards because if I had to buy 50 separate ones, you'd be spending about $100 or more, 150 maybe. And I said, gee, do you have any boxes of Christmas cards? And they said, no, but you can go to Target. And I said to the young lady, the clerk, I said, I'm sorry, but I won't go there because of their bathroom policies. And you know what? She didn't mock me for saying that. She just kind of nodded in agreement, a little bit of a smirk, and that was the end of it. This notion, though, that people who don't know what they are, I'm sorry, The liberals can scream and yell and try to browbeat us into accepting this. But you know what? The majority of us know, even though most of us don't dare say it, that they are BS crazy. Is that how I can put that? This is the whack job from Toronto, the college professor who says there are no differences between men and women.
Basically, it's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex. And I'm a historian of medicine. I can unpack that for you at great length if you want, but in the interest of time, I won't. So that's a very popular misconception. So essentially, when in my transgender studies classes, what we're doing is looking at actual research and identifying ways that current social issues related to trans people or things that are associated with trans, such as free speech arguments and claims, how that connects to the way that people are thinking, the way that research has been framed, the histories.
Give us some of the other pronouns that one would hear, typically.
I don't focus on pronouns because pronouns are actually part of a cisnormative culture. So what we do is learn about...
Well, I'm going to stop you right there.
Yes, I was just about to explain.
Good.
So we don't start from a cisnormative perspective because that can't actually go very far.
What does cisnormative mean?
So I'm going to start us there. Cisnormative is basically the very popular idea and assumption that most people probably have, and definitely that our structures convey, that there is such a thing as male and female, that they connect to being a girl or a boy or a man or a woman.
I think he's trying to cover up for something of his own issue, and therefore, well, anyway, caller joining us. Caller, you're up next at 9:18 on Top Story. Go ahead.
Good morning, Bill. All this liberalism stuff is just straight from the fiery pit of hell, bottom line. And it is Satan trying to do everything he can to disrupt and take people away from believing in our Creator and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Bottom line. And they've been doing it for years. And you can just see it getting worse and worse as time goes, because we are really in a spiritual battle like probably hasn't been since the time when Jesus was crucified, or before, little before that. And it's as the time gets shorter and shorter for Satan, the harder that him and all the demons that he has with him, the fallen angels, they're in everything. Just look at the last 8 years, man. We've just come so far down. It's just unbelievable.
I hope we're going to have some sort of a pushback, honestly. And the writer Tammy Bruce, of all people, conservative but also a lesbian, has a piece this week at Washington Times where she reflects upon perhaps and because she doesn't believe in these liberals, and including those of alternate lifestyles, bullying other people. And she says, just maybe we've reached that high water mark and we're going to start turning it around, and people who are more traditional are going to have a bit of a pushback. And I do believe, and thank you for the call, I do believe that a lot of people out there just were afraid to say it. And you know what? Donald Trump is like a great big blank check that allows you to do it all over again. Amen. Got more on this subject coming up, and also they're trying to blame Trump voters for a racial slur in Boise. Details coming up. I was referencing that column, and I'll get to that in just a moment, by Tammy Bruce. And it has to deal with a story that was in the news last week. These efforts to try and intimidate people of Christian faith who are in public life may finally be coming to an end. I had a friend. She ran for U.S. Senate in Delaware back in 2010. And she was ripped for her Christian beliefs in newspaper editorials constantly. And she actually would come out and say, my views on a lot of these things are the same as Barack Obama's in 2008. The media wouldn't have anything to do with that. The thing is, a lot of people who were working at that newspaper were going to her church. And it just infuriated me that her pastor or her bishop wouldn't stand up and say, well, look, we're not endorsing any candidate, but this is what we teach. And so you've got people in ministry as well who are too timid to come out and actually defend their own faithful. It's 9:23. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Or, they're just mouthing the words and thinking, you know what? Yeah, well, we'll play along until we liberals can actually take over the church. 19 right now. I wanted to also mention our friends at Waddell and Reed here in Twin Falls. They are an investment company that helps you plan for the future. They've been doing it, gosh, just shy of 80 years. So you're in business that long. You can say somebody really has that means they have come through depression, wars, recessions, more wars, and still in business. They're doing something right, offering mutual funds, but not just one, but two, which is very rare. And when they invest money, they're going to use a tried and true strategy. They're not going to fritter your money away on somebody's, well, I've got a new source of energy. I'm going to collect all of the animals throughout the Magic Valley, and we're going to power industry on the methane. No, they're not going to get it, and maybe it'll work someday, but they're not going to, they're going to sit down with you and say, look, trust us. We're not going to get into any harebrained schemes. And they will work with you as an individual because they know as an individual, your needs aren't necessarily the needs or wants of mine when we go to that point where we are no longer working and we're looking to have that money still working for us. Remember that. They'll work for you individually and they take that planning personally. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Tammy Bruce, now some of you may not know this, Tammy Bruce is a lesbian. She's also a conservative. And she doesn't believe, see, that's the difference, I think, between a lot of people. They claim we conservatives don't like them. I don't like the liberals. If somebody is not one of these activist liberals and they live an alternative lifestyle and they don't bother me, I've got no problem with them. It's that in-your-face stuff that they continue to think at least a small portion of every community does it. She says an important paradigm shift seems to be happening. Case in point, typical gay liberals decide to publicly bully Christians because of their faith. Bullies then expect all heck to break loose, with targeted Christians being frightened into either disavowing aspects of their faith or more likely their business or livelihood being destroyed after a campaign of public hate and derision. Now, you may remember you had a liberal rag called BuzzFeed was attacking a couple that host a show, Chip and Joanna Gaines, on HGTV called Fixer Upper, because they go to a Bible-believing church. And again, liberals apparently think that you ought to just start shredding the pages in the Bible. Well, that one's not very nice, so we've got to tell God we don't like it, and he better play along. Yeah. She writes, the Gaines' crime is that they might possibly also believe in traditional marriage. And she said, who told them they have a right to their own opinions without being condemned? But she goes on to say that out of the effort, and this reminds me a little bit of what happened with the Robertsons a few years ago, when it was discovered that, gee, they go to church and they actually believe it, unlike we liberals who go just because we want to put it on our resume. Remember, they tried to get the show Duck Dynasty canceled from Arts and Entertainment Network called A&E, and it failed. Well, they failed again over at BuzzFeed because even a lot of liberals said, whoa, wait a minute. We might have gone too far here. Ms. Bruce writes, the most dramatic and satisfying display of the public's rejection of anti-Christian bigotry is the fact that Fixer Upper, in the midst of the smear campaign, enjoyed a record-breaking premiere on HGTV. So we may be at the end. Oh, and the liberals were angry with me the other day because I told them if they really wanted to add the words in Boise, then they could respect cake bakers, wedding photographers, and caterers who didn't, for religious reasons, want to participate in their nuptials. How dare you? Because they don't care about it. Liberals all scream and yell Republicans are unwilling to compromise and that we're obstructionists. And yet, when you come right down to it, if you offer them a compromise, they'll refuse because it's all about demand, demand, demand. If you had a group of angels staying at your home, they would come to your door and they would say, bring them out so that we may know them. I'm convinced of that. Nothing has changed in the thousands of years since that happened the first time around. It's 9:28. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. They must know deep down in that there's something wrong with what they're doing. So therefore, they need to force everyone else thinking, well, when I get to judgment, because even if they don't believe, there's always a little doubt even among the atheists, I'm sure, that if there is indeed a day of judgment, when they get there, they'll be able to say, well, he went along with me. You going to condemn everybody? There's a great line that I saw in the movie A Man for All Seasons when I was a young fellow. and they're trying to pressure Thomas more into going along to, just give up his faith in the matter of the king's divorce. And he's told by one of his friends, "Come on, Thomas, sign. So, just for fellowship." And Moore says, "Well, if I sign and then I condemn my soul to hell, will you go along with me for fellowship?" Something that everybody out there has to be asking themselves when they face this pressure. 9:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 18. Vandals have struck the Idaho Black History Museum. Well, vandals, calling it vandalism, somebody drew in the snow. And I'm sure the liberal media is now trying to say it was a Trump supporter. I want to share that with you in a few minutes. It's 9:30, 18 as I said. You're listening to Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com.